Welcome to the Dark Legends where ancient fears come alive. In this chilling video, we uncover 10 of the most fearsome monsters ever whispered about in mythology. These aren't just tales, they're echoes of nightmares passed down through generations. From bloodthirsty beasts lurking in shadows to god-defying titans that shook the heavens, these creatures were designed to terrify. Their legends shaped cultures, warned of danger, and still haunt the darkest corners of our imagination. Are they pure myth, or terrifying truths forgotten by time? Join us as we journey into the heart of ancient horror. The legends await, if you dare. Typhon, the storm of chaos and the last threat to Olympus. Towering taller than mountains, cloaked in storms, and bellowing with the screams of 100 monstrous heads, Typhon was the final and most terrifying challenge the Olympian gods ever faced. According to ancient Greek mythology, Typhon was no ordinary beast. He was born of the earth itself, a living cataclysm created to challenge divine order and tear down the rule of Zeus. He was the embodiment of chaos, destruction, and the raw fury of nature, destined to either conquer Olympus or die trying. This myth, like many from the classical age, is far more than a fantasy story. It encapsulates the ancient Greeks' attempt to explain the uncontrollable forces of the world around them. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, storms, and sudden disasters. And within Typhon's colossal form, we see those fears take shape. Origins, born of Gaia and Tartarus. The tale of Typhon begins in the deep recesses of ancient Greek cosmogony. After the defeat of the Titans in the Great Titanomachy, Zeus had established himself as the supreme ruler of the cosmos. But not everyone celebrated his reign. Gaia, the personification of the earth and mother of the Titans, was enraged by how Zeus had cast her children into Tartarus, the deepest abyss of the underworld. Seeking vengeance, she united with Tartarus himself, the dark and primordial force of the pit, and together they gave birth to a monstrous child like no other. Thus was born Typhon, also spelled Typhoeus or Typhaon, an entity so vast and terrible that he made the Titans seem tame by comparison. Some later myths also mention Echidna, a half-woman, half-snake monster, as his consort, and from their union would spring many of the world's most terrifying creatures. Cerberus, the Hydra, the Chimera, and more. But before all of that, Typhon himself would rise to wage war against the gods. Description: the nightmare incarnate. Ancient texts provide many differing and fantastical descriptions of Typhon, but all agree on one thing. His size and appearance defied imagination. According to Hesiod's Theogony, Typhon was a godlike monster with 100 snake heads, each spitting fire, with voices that screeched like animals, roared like lions, barked like dogs, and even cried out in the tongues of men and gods. Other sources elaborate even more dramatically. His upper body reached the stars, while his legs, coiled with enormous serpents, stretched far across the land. His wings blotted out the sun, and fire shot from his eyes, consuming the heavens in flame. Storm clouds swirled wherever he walked, and earthquakes followed in his wake. To the ancient Greeks, Typhon wasn't just a monster. He was a living natural disaster, the chaos of a world out of control. A mythological explanation for volcanoes, hurricanes, and untamed wilderness. The war on Olympus, Typhon's attack. Once he reached his full power, Typhon rose from the depths of the earth and began his march toward Mount Olympus, home of the gods. The Olympians, caught off guard by this apocalyptic threat, fled in terror. According to Apollodorus, the gods transformed themselves into animals to escape Typhon's wrath. Zeus became a ram, Apollo a crow, Artemis a cat, Hermes a goat, Ares a wild boar. Only Athena, goddess of war and wisdom, remained steadfast and rebuked Zeus for his cowardice, urging him to stand and fight. Roused by her words, Zeus regained his courage and rose into the skies, wielding his thunderbolts. The battle that followed shook the heavens. Typhon hurled mountains, tore up forests, and raged with unimaginable fury. Zeus countered with lightning bolts, throwing storm after storm at the beast. At first, Typhon gained the upper hand. In one version of the myth, he seized Zeus himself, tore the sinews from his hands and feet, and imprisoned him in a cave, guarded by a dragoness named Delphine. It was only through the cunning of Hermes and Pan, who recovered Zeus's sinews and restored him to health, that the tide turned. Once fully restored, Zeus unleashed the full might of the heavens, striking Typhon down in a cataclysmic showdown that echoed across the universe. Imprisonment beneath Mount Etna. Defeated at last, Typhon fell back to the earth, shaking the mountains with his collapse. Zeus did not kill him entirely, for Typhon was a primordial force, one that could never fully die. Instead, Zeus cast him beneath Mount Etna, a massive volcano in Sicily. There, Typhon remains imprisoned, trapped beneath layers of rock and fire. According to ancient belief, the volcanic eruptions of Etna, with their fire, ash, and earth-rending explosions, were signs that Typhon still raged in his prison, trying to break free. Every tremor, every plume of smoke was thought to be his wrath boiling up, a reminder that chaos is never truly gone. Symbolism, what Typhon represents. Myths are not just stories, they are symbols. And Typhon, more than almost any other figure in Greek mythology, represents something larger than himself. 1. Chaos versus order. At its core, Typhon's myth is a story of chaos versus order, a theme common in many ancient cultures. Just as Marduk slays Tiamat in Babylonian myth, and just as Yahweh divides the waters in Genesis, Zeus must confront the chaotic force of Typhon to preserve the cosmos. Typhon is not evil in a moral sense, he is the natural counterforce to the structured world the Olympians have created. Without his defeat, the divine hierarchy collapses. 2. Fear of nature. Typhon also reflects the ancient fear of natural disasters. With his fiery breath, stormy wings, and earth-shaking steps, he symbolizes volcanoes, earthquakes, thunderstorms, tidal waves. To the Greeks, nature was not serene and comforting, it was wild, unpredictable, and terrifying. Typhon embodied the worst-case scenario, a nature turned against humankind. 3. The limits of divine power. Interestingly, Typhon's initial victory over Zeus suggests that even gods can falter. The Olympians were not invincible, their power was earned, not absolute. Zeus needed help, courage, and cleverness to win. This dimension of the myth reminds us that struggle and failure are part of every heroic narrative, even divine ones. Legacy, the father of monsters. Though Typhon was imprisoned, his legacy lived on. With Echidna, he fathered a whole generation of horrors, including Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld; Chimera, a lion-goat serpent hybrid that breathed fire; Hydra, the many-headed serpent slain by Heracles; Orthrus, a two-headed hound; Sphinx, the riddle-giving monster of Thebes; Nemean lion, the beast with impenetrable skin. These creatures would go on to challenge gods and heroes alike, ensuring that Typhon's influence persisted for generations. Even in defeat, he sowed the seeds of future chaos. Typhon in later traditions and cultures. Over time, Typhon's story evolved. Later Roman writers like Virgil and Ovid would reference him as the cause of volcanic activity and as a symbol of destructive power. In Christian-influenced medieval thought, Typhon was sometimes compared to Satan, another rebellious figure cast down by a divine ruler. In this sense, Typhon represents not only chaos but pride and rebellion, punished and buried beneath the earth. In modern times, Typhon occasionally appears in literature, films, and video games as the archetypal boss monster, the ultimate challenge that the hero must face. From Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series to God of War, Typhon continues to inspire awe. The eternal roar beneath the earth. Typhon's story is one of grandeur and terror. As the final and greatest threat to Olympus, he tested the very fabric of the cosmos. Larger than mountains, wreathed in storms, breathing fire and screaming with the voices of 100 beings, Typhon is the incarnation of untamed chaos, the storm that comes to challenge the gods. But Zeus's victory over Typhon is not merely a tale of brute force triumphing over monstrosity. It is a story about the balance between order and disorder, the need for vigilance, and the reminder that even the mightiest can be shaken. And though he lies buried beneath Mount Etna, legends still whisper of his anger. Every tremor, every eruption, every plume of ash that blots out the sun, it could be Typhon struggling once more to rise from the earth. Amit, the devourer of the dead and the end of hope. To the ancient Egyptians, the afterlife was more than a mystical concept. It was the ultimate goal of existence. Life on earth was a temporary state, a brief trial in which one's moral fiber was tested through actions, choices, and the balance of the soul. Death was not feared as an end but prepared for as a journey. However, that journey came with one vital and terrifying condition. One had to pass the weighing of the heart. If the heart, the vessel of thought, emotion, and morality, failed the test, the soul would not move on. Instead, it would be condemned to face Ammit, one of the most fearsome beings in Egyptian mythology. Ammit was no ordinary monster. She did not torment, punish, or imprison. Her role was far worse. She erased. No afterlife. No rebirth. No second chance. To be devoured by Ammit was to be erased from the cosmic order, stripped of one's name, essence, and legacy. She embodied the final death, the death of the soul. This was a fate so dreadful, it could only be reserved for the worst of the unworthy. The trial of death, weighing the heart. In Egyptian belief, when a person died, their soul began a perilous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. This journey was filled with trials, gods, and creatures who could aid or doom the soul depending on its purity and preparedness. The soul eventually arrived at the Hall of Ma'at, where the ultimate judgment awaited. Here stood Osiris, the god of the dead, seated on a throne surrounded by 42 divine judges. The deceased's heart would be placed on one side of a scale. On the other side sat the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. If the heart was light, unburdened by sin, it would balance or weigh less than the feather. This meant the person had lived a just life and could enter the blessed field of reeds, a heavenly mirror of Egypt, where the soul would enjoy eternal peace. However, if the heart was heavy with guilt, lies, and wickedness, the scale would tip. And then came the moment of true terror. Who is Ammit? Ammit, also called Ammit or Amamet, was the monstrous deity assigned to consume the hearts of the unworthy. She was not worshipped in temples nor honored in hymns. Unlike Osiris, Anubis, or Thoth, she had no cult or following. Ammit was not a goddess in the traditional sense. She was a force of divine retribution, feared but never praised. Ammit's appearance was a chilling reflection of Egypt's most dangerous predators. She had the head of a crocodile, the ferocious reptile that stalked the Nile's banks, the forequarters of a lion, symbolizing brute strength and relentless power, the hindquarters of a hippopotamus, one of the most feared and aggressive animals in ancient Egypt. Each of these creatures alone could kill a human with ease. Together, they formed a terrifying composite beast of destruction, created to annihilate that which threatened the sacred order. But Ammit did not hunt the living. Her role was to devour the souls of the morally corrupt, especially those who lied, stole, murdered, or disrupted Ma'at's divine balance. The devourer's judgment. When a soul failed the weighing of the heart, Ammit would not hesitate. She would lunge forward and devour the heart, the seat of the person's mind and morality. This act was not symbolic, it was permanent. Once the heart was eaten, the soul ceased to exist. The Egyptians believed that without the heart, a soul could not be reborn, judged again, or traverse the afterlife. There was no hell, no fiery damnation like in later religious traditions. There was no cycle of reincarnation either. There was only nothingness, total annihilation of the self. No memories, no name, no presence in the world of the living or dead. This erasure was called second death, and it was considered far worse than physical death. The very concept of a soul's destruction struck fear into every ancient Egyptian heart. Ammit and Ma'at, the balance of order. Though terrifying, Ammit was not evil. She did not hunt indiscriminately. She existed to protect Ma'at, the goddess of truth and universal order. In the Egyptian worldview, chaos, Isfet, was the great enemy of creation, always threatening to destroy the harmony the gods had established. Every lie, injustice, or act of cruelty tipped the world closer to Isfet. Ammit, therefore, was a necessary force, ensuring that only those who upheld Ma'at's principles were allowed to live forever. In this way, Ammit was the divine cleaner, the one who erased the stain of disorder before it could reach the afterlife. She worked alongside Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming and funerary rites, who guided the dead through their trials and helped weigh the heart. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, recorded the outcome. Ammit was the final part of this sacred tribunal, the enforcer of the ultimate verdict. Her very presence reinforced a powerful message: live justly or face oblivion. Cultural and psychological significance. To modern eyes, Ammit may seem like just another monster of myth. But to the Egyptians, she symbolized something much deeper: the consequences of a life lived without honor or conscience. Unlike other mythologies that emphasized eternal punishment or torment, Egyptian belief centered on the preservation or obliteration of the soul. Ammit didn't torture or imprison. She simply ensured that those who defied moral law did not defile eternity. This concept was both terrifying and deeply motivating. Egyptian society was one of the earliest civilizations to value a written ethical code, not just religious rituals. The negative confession in the Book of the Dead, a list of 42 sins the dead claimed not to have committed, was a direct response to this system of moral judgment. Ammit's presence made those confessions more than formality. They were a desperate plea to be spared from being forgotten. In psychological terms, Ammit represented the fear of insignificance, of being erased from history, of living a life that left no trace. In a culture that believed in the power of names, memories, and tombs, having one's soul devoured meant losing everything that made one human. Ammit in art and texts. Ammit appears most frequently in funerary texts and tomb art, usually depicted crouched beside the scales of judgment, jaws open, eyes hungry. She is often drawn in profile, emphasizing her monstrous anatomy and the tension of her role. While not a god to be prayed to, her image served as a warning and a reminder of the importance of moral integrity. She features prominently in the Book of the Dead, especially in chapter 125, where the weighing takes place. The artwork surrounding this chapter almost always includes Ammit, either licking her chops or poised to pounce. This consistent presence underscores her symbolic weight. She was the cosmic garbage collector, ensuring the underworld remained unpolluted by evil souls. Though Ammit herself did not have temples or priests, her presence haunted the collective consciousness of the people. She was a silent enforcer, her power lying in her inevitability. Ammit in popular culture and modern interpretations. In recent years, Ammit has resurfaced in literature, video games, and film. While often reduced to a monster role, some portrayals, such as in Moon Knight, a Marvel series where she is reimagined as a vengeful goddess, hint at her deeper mythological roots. Yet many of these depictions blur the lines between justice and vengeance, sometimes portraying her as overzealous or unjust, ironically missing the point of her original role. In ancient myth, Ammit was not proactive. She did not seek out sinners or judge them herself. She merely executed the outcome of divine law. She did not act unless the scales were tipped. In this, she was a mirror of perfect consequence, blind, immediate, and irreversible. This subtlety is often lost in modern depictions, but to the Egyptians, it was precisely what made her so terrifying. There was no pleading with Ammit, no appeals, no escape. One either lived in harmony with Ma'at, or one faced her jaws. The ultimate fate, oblivion. In many world religions, damnation means eternal punishment, hellfire, demons, pain. But the Egyptians feared something even more chilling: non-existence. To be forgotten was to never have lived. The Egyptian obsession with preserving names, bodies, and stories through tombs, hieroglyphs, and statues wasn't mere tradition, it was a way to defy Ammit. As long as someone remembered your name, spoke your story, and honored your legacy, you lived on in the afterlife. But if you failed the test, Ammit made sure no one would remember you. You would be lost to time, stripped from the fabric of existence. This fate wasn't just personal, it had cosmic consequences. The Egyptians believed the harmony of the universe depended on each soul doing its part. A corrupt soul entering the afterlife could unbalance the entire cosmic order. Thus, Ammit's devouring was not just punishment, it was protection. She kept eternity clean. The end of hope. Ammit was not a villain. She was not malevolent nor cruel. She was a function of the cosmic law, a necessary presence in the moral structure of the world. Her role was terrifying not because she inflicted suffering, but because she ended everything. She was the final wall, the edge of existence beyond which nothing lay. To face Amit was to face the consequences of a life lived selfishly, violently, or unjustly. To be devoured by her was to become nothing at all. No memories, no name, no dreams. She was not just the eater of hearts. She was the eater of hope. Thanks for venturing into the shadows with us through the dark legends. 10 most fearsome monsters of mythology. These ancient creatures may be legends, but their stories still send chills down our spines. Which monster haunted you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into dark mythology, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales that blur the line between myth and nightmare. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and beware the monsters that still might be watching. The myths may be ancient, but the fear is forever. See you soon.